Monday afternoon, too. It's 4 o'clock in time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you had a good weekend. Browns signed a couple of free agents over the weekend. Zion Johnson, one of them. He's a guard. Talked about working with the Browns' new offensive line coach, George Warhop.
I think the key thing is we got to work together. We got to, put in the time on the field, in the weight room, whatever's required to, grow that synergy playing together, knowing how we set, knowing, how we fit different double teams. And I think that just takes dedication, and that takes, the effort put forward to work at it. And I think, the guys that we have, in my brief time talking, to Elton, I think that we're all alike in that way that, we want to be great. We want to, have that synergy as an offensive line. So we're going to do anything necessary to achieve that.
Browns continue to add pieces to that offensive line. They need to completely rebuild it. Quincy Williams, another guy that was signed, a linebacker, signed as a free agent, talked about how Mike Rutenberg, Browns' new defensive coordinator, helped unlock his game when they were together with the Jets.
Playing freely. At the Jaguars, they were asking me to play in a box, far as like technique wise and things like that. When I got to the Jets, they let me play free, let me be the athlete I am, far as zones and things like that. And then also being more in the man coverage, not really being focused on my eyes until I got ready to train my eyes. And then later in 2023, that's when I was ready for the full package of the Jets defense, or whatever you could say, because I had first just got in. So with that being said, when I got the full defensive down, that's when it kind of like flourished in 2003 when I went all pro, where I picked up on the defense. I knew exactly where I was supposed to be at. I knew that it was simple, and it was just run and hit. So it was easy to play in.
We'll hear more from Williams a little bit later in the show. Today, Tytus Howard, the guy that the Browns traded for with the Titans, met with the media. He was also told where he would be playing on the Browns' offensive line.
I'll be playing right tackle.
And what do you like about that? Why is that important to you?
It's just right tackle is what I played ever since I transitioned to offensive line. I played offensive line for 2 years in college, and when I moved from tight end, I started playing right tackle first, and so that's this position that stuck with me. I was drafted at Houston as a left tackle, but they traded for Larry Tunsil my rookie year, so I ended up moving to right tackle, and that's what I got the most comfortable at. And I feel like when I'm at right tackle, I play my best. And my job and the reason Cleveland brought me here is to be my best. So if they want my best, which they've already explained to me, I'll be playing tackle, so I can do whatever I got to do to help the team win games. And, I could be a mentor to all the younger guys with all the knowledge I've, had over the years of playing left tackle, left guard, right guard. But for Cleveland, I'm looking to play right tackle.
Plenty of Browns talk coming up with Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Chronicle Telegram, Brownso.com, and Chris Easterling, Browns beat reporter from the Akron Beacon Journal. Let's turn our attention to the Cavs. NBA playoffs start in a little over a month. Hard to believe. Cavs have not been great as of late. 5 of 5 in their last 10, hosting the Dallas Mavericks, who they beat in Dallas last time out. And Max Strus returns to the lineup, his debut. Strus hit the three-pointer, but the Cavs didn't have nearly enough. Strus, again, another three-pointer. He had 24 points, 6 of 7 from three-point range. That was the good. The bad was the defense. Max Christie finds Cooper Flagg. He dunks it. Brandon Williams also running in the half court. Flagg, this time he goes outside. Knocks down the three. Flagg led the Mavericks with 27 points. Najee Marshall finds Marvin Bagley for the alley-oop. And the Mavericks pulled away, and they hold off the Cavs 130-120. Dallas wins by 10. Cavs now fourth place in the Eastern Conference, 2.5 behind the Knicks. They take on the Bucks in Milwaukee tomorrow night. Cavs want to start playing better. Again, just about a month left in the regular season. Miami Redhawks, college basketball, unbeaten in the regular season, lost in the first round of the MAC tournament. A lot of talk, were they going to get in? They definitely got into the NCAA. They'll be part of the first four in Dayton Wednesday night, kind of close to the campus in Oxford. They'll be playing SMU from the ACC. Mustangs are coached by Andy Enfield. Enfield was asked about SMU's first-round opponent, the Miami Redhawks.
When you say polarizingly, maybe to one or two media people that speak out against them, I think they deserve to be in a tournament. They went 31-0, so some people just need to be quiet on air sometimes. And I think Miami of Ohio deserves to be there. They're an outstanding team. They share the basketball. They shoot threes, and to go 31-0 in the regular season is incredible. And so I have all the respect in the world. I coached at Florida Gulf Coast, my first head job, and you go 31-0 at that level of college basketball, you deserve to be there. And we're certainly not going to take them lightly because they're not in a power conference, but they're an outstanding basketball team.
And Enfeld's Florida Gulf Coast team, you might remember, beat Georgetown in the first round, and then they went to the Sweet 16. So he knows a little bit about the team that he's getting ready to play. Browns are up first. We're going to step aside, take a quick break. Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter, on the other side of the break. Sports4CLE, talking Browns. Stay with us.
You got so much to do. It's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day. 'Cause it's fun all over the state. So come on. Great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little play in your day. Put a little play in your day.
Browns are up first on Sports4CLE. Tytus Howard, Browns right tackle, as we heard earlier in the show, talked about what differentiates George Warhop, who he played for, from other offensive line coaches.
Just his attention to detail when it comes to technique, play style. You're going to get the same guy every single day. He's not going to sugarcoat it. He's not one of those coaches that, you're going to treat the best player, highest paid player, different than any other guys that may be on the practice squad. He's going to coach everybody the same way, and he's going to demand the best out of every one of us every single day. And that's just how he is. That's just how he's built, and it kind of rubs off on all the guys on the line, and basically rubs off on everyone on the team because everyone I've ever seen been around him has the same thing to say about him. No matter where he's been, players he's coached, you're going to hear the same thing. And, he demands the best. And if you can't meet that energy, you won't play for him. And that's the kind of coach I like to play for.
Let's welcome in Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Chronicle Telegram, brownzone.com. We're hearing the same things from the new guys coming on about the new offensive line coach, Scott.
Yeah, and they're not the only ones. Joe Thomas praised George Warhop. They were together, I think, 5 seasons from 2009 to 2013. And when Joe retired, he said really good things about Warhop as his favorite offensive line coach throughout his career. So I think when they hired him, when Todd Monken brought him from Baltimore, I thought that was a good move. And as the Browns do this huge transition to what could be an entirely new offensive line, Warhop's obviously going to play a critical role in it.
All right, so let's take a look. Still some time left before the draft, but these are the roster additions that the Browns have made. Johnson, Howard, Elton Jenkins, guard center, brother of Tevin Jenkins, who comes back. Quincy Williams comes in. They bring in an offensive tackle. Jake Stahl is kind of interesting. The last two guys are young guys that were free agents that came back for the Browns, trying to kind of expand their role. It's pretty clear the early part of free agency, it's been offensive line remake, and I know you wrote an article about it. What are your thoughts just about what the Browns have done so far, what Andrew Berry has done so far with the line?
Yeah, I mean, that's where almost all the additions have been. So he recognized what everybody else did, that they needed a extreme makeover across the offensive line. And he talked at the Combine how he wanted to do it, follow the Bears blueprint, which meant trading for guys, signing free agents, drafting, and then developing guys on your roster. What has stuck out to me, David, is, they could have gone with, say, hey, Luke Whippler's going to be the starter center. He's been here since, he's been here for 3 years. draft pick. He's been in the building. Or they could have done the same thing with Zach Zinter. And I'm not saying either one of those guys might not be a starter, right? There's plenty of time left, and they still have to figure out who's playing where. But I think the commitment to the offensive line we saw over the last week or two drives home the point that they're not just handing jobs to guys who have been in the building. And I think that's important. They're going with guys that have proven track records. They played in the league. You know, the minimum is 4 years with Zion Johnson. The rest of the guys have been in the league longer. And if you're going to try to fix this offense, you have to start there. And if you're going to get a good evaluation of, let's say, Shadur Sanders, you better have a line in front of him that can block for Quinshon Judkins and protect Shadur Sanders. And Andrew Berry made that his number one priority. We'll see if these were the right guys, but he certainly addressed the biggest need on the team.
So one of those guys that they brought in, Zion Johnson, called it an honor to possibly replace Joel Bitonio. I know you wrote an article. Take us through that.
Yeah, Zion has he's played across the line like a lot of these guys have, but most recently at left guard for the Chargers. Obviously, Joe Bitonio's been the left guard for the Browns for 12 years. The Browns don't know if he's coming back yet or not, if he's going to retire. The moves made over the last week plus are certainly leave the Browns in a spot where if Joe Bitonio retires, they are prepared for life without him. And that would start with Zion Johnson just stepping into that left guard spot. So, you know, he said he'd love to be on the team with Joel, but if he's not, then he's got big shoes to fill, but he'd be honored to step into that role and try to play like Joe Bitonio played, which is at, you know, a Hall of Fame level. So, you know, we'll see how that winds up playing out, but I think the odds are good that it's going to be Zion Johnson at left guard next year, and it's going to be such a change because we are so used to seeing Joe Bitonio not only play there, but play there at an incredibly high level.
Another guy that's new, Elton Jenkins. Now, his brother is Tevin Jenkins, so he's kind of coming in here. But he talked about the line that the Browns have acquired, the linemen that they've brought in, and also kind of trying to build some chemistry there.
Zion, I've trained with Tytus in 2018 coming out. We went to the Senior Bowl together. Got a good relationship with him. Just met Zion. He like a good guy. Seeing some football on him, so we definitely got the pieces. They definitely brought good pieces in to help us solidify the O-line. So I'm excited about that. Just making sure that we're here, ready to compete with the D-line that we got. I think it's gonna make it easier on game day rather than in practice. So just being here, ready to compete, like you say, building the continuity, the chemistry with each other is gonna be very key.
Scott, so you hear that, and you look at it, and you see this guy is ranked here by PFF, and all the guys the Browns have signed are kind of middle. They're ranked middle of the pack or lower by PFF. Having said that, I think offensive line, more so than anything, is you can't really judge it. It's dependent on who the offensive line coach is and the chemistry and what you're asking these guys to do. More so than any other position, the offensive line guys can do some things really well or they wouldn't be in the NFL. And there's also some things that they can't do that sometimes you're going to get asked to do just based on circumstance.
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, the Browns feel that all these guys are higher than their PFF grades and rankings, or else they don't spend, you know, whatever it is, 19 and a half a year on Zion Johnson and 21 plus on Howard. But I think those rankings, you know, and I respect everybody who does them, and they watch all the film and they break down every snap. You know, it's not an exact science. You know, I'm not even sure the block win rates are an exact science. But to your point, David, I do think 5 guys working as a unit can have a big impact. The coach certainly can have a big impact, and we saw that with the Browns when they went from Bill Callahan to somebody else. It was noticeable. And if you find one of those great line coaches, which they believe George Warhop is, whether it's a Callahan or was it Stoutland that was with the Eagles for so long? I think the Colts guy was a Tom Moore that was with the Colts forever. Those guys have a huge impact on the offensive line, on the run game, on the team in general. So if these guys stay healthy, I do think there's reason to believe that they will play at an average or at a level above what PFF says.
Yeah, the one thing I would say, I think Andrew Berry has raised the floor for what this line group will be. I don't know how much higher the ceiling is. We'll see. But the other thing, you touched on it there, part of the problem with the line the last 2 years is you haven't been able to keep the same 5 guys on the field in 3 games in a row.
Yeah, and that was a huge problem last year. I mean, it dates back to 2023. Even when they made that playoff run, they were down to whatever, 5th and 6th tackles. So, part of that's luck. Part of it's having the right enough depth, and it's hard. I mean, it's hard to get 5 quality tackles, right? You don't have 5 starting caliber tackles on rosters. It's just really difficult to do. These guys that they brought in have played a lot of games, have been durable for the most part. I think that's something Andrew Berry was looking for. And, when you talk about, they just couldn't afford to go with a bunch of young guys across that line. I think that's something Andrew Berry's afraid to do. And Todd Monken was afraid to do. We heard him talk about it at the Combine. So, yes, they're going to add guys in the draft. Yes, the left tackle will probably be a rookie. But they felt that there needed to be veteran presences among that line, and that's what they went out and got.
How do you think DeJuan Jones, we've mentioned injured. How does DeJuan Jones factor into this? Because when he's been healthy, he's looked good in spurts.
It's a great question. And, part of me was thinking, okay, if DeJuan Jones is healthy, maybe he's your right tackle and you slide Tytus Howard inside the guard, but Howard was adamant that that's not the case. So let's assume he's correct and that he's the right tackle. Then I think there's a chance DeJuan Jones opens your left tackle if you want to bring along the draft pick rookie slowly. Or he's your swing tackle because he's got experience playing on the right side and left side. Or if he's completely healthy and looks great, maybe you play him at right guard. Mekhi Becton was a tackle, slid into guard, has had some success in the league doing that. Similar sized guys, ginormous guys. Maybe you can do that with DeJuan, move him to right guard. And if you do that, then Elton Jenkins becomes your center. Right? And right now I think there's a question where Jenkins plays. But if DeJuan Jones winds up slotting in at right guard, then I think it's a no-brainer. Elton Jenkins is your center.
Scott Patrick and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports for CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrek, Browns beat reporter for the Chronicle, Telegram, and BrownsZone.com. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, this is pertaining to Andrew Berry and the Cleveland Browns and the wide receiver team. The receiver core for Andrew Berry has been historically very poor. We just haven't had anything production-wise since really Amari Cooper. He brought in Jerry Jeudy. This guy, stone hands, can't catch a ball at all. We don't really have any depth there at the wide receiver core. He's drafted many people that's been bust as well. His history speaks for itself, in the wide receiver core. So he has got to do something to get us some receivers. That's all there is to this.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Scott, I won't argue with the wide receivers, but I would also say they haven't taken one above the third. Andrew Berry has not drafted a wide receiver above the third round. Whether that's conscious, unconscious, he just hasn't. So they traded for Cooper. That was good. Jeudy had an up year and a down year.
Yeah, I think you can look at not drafting a receiver before the third round a couple of different ways. Is it, well, you can't really blame him because he hasn't from the third round down, it's kind of hit or miss, right? It's a lottery ticket. Or you can say, why aren't you taking a guy higher, right? It's such an important position. Address it in the first or second round. And I know he didn't have first round picks for those 3 years, so I get there's other factors. But I think over the last few years, I think it's safe to say that Andrew Berry has not adequately addressed the receiver position. And part of that last year was Judy disappointed. Part of it's been Cedric Tillman hasn't stayed healthy and been inconsistent, but he's a draft pick. He's a third-round pick. David Bell gets hurt, but, he really didn't flash or show much before he got hurt. We know the Anthony Schwartz debacle. So it feels like Andrew Berry hasn't taken many big swings at that position. The biggest was Amari Cooper. That worked. But the rest feel maybe conservative when he's addressing that room, and I think he needs to get out of that because they need to upgrade that position. I think he appreciates that. I don't know in the past he always appreciated it. I think he thought the room was better than everyone else thought. But I think now he knows that he needs to add a piece or two. It's just a question of how's he going to do that.
All right, so when you look at the roster, what do you think happens at 6? I mean, the glaring needs are quarterback, left tackle, and wide receiver, in my mind. What do you think happens at 6?
Right now I would say they trade down. I think what they've done to this point in free agency by putting all those resources into the offensive line, I do think that gives Andrew Berry greater flexibility on what he wants to do at 6 and in the first round. Let's assume they take a left tackle somewhere. They could probably get a starting left tackle at 24 if they wait. So that opens you up at 6, right? But if you needed a left tackle, right tackle, a center, then maybe you had to take one at 6. But now I think there's more flexibility. Could they take somebody who's not a receiver or an offensive lineman or a quarterback? I find that hard to believe, but yeah, I do think that's on the table. But I think what's most likely is they trade back a little bit, get some extra picks or an extra pick, and then start to fill those needs, but also have the flexibility to take whatever guy they want or whatever position they want at a certain spot. So if they love a receiver, then let's say 12, you don't have to force tackle. If they like a tackle at 12, take your tackle. If they like a safety at 12, they would have enough picks and enough flexibility to do that. So, I think it's way too tough to predict 6 right now. If they stay at 6, I would predict a tackle followed by receiver. But I don't know if that's a slam dunk.
Are you surprised that they haven't added a wide receiver to this point to that room?
Yes. I'm not surprised they didn't take a big swing in free agency, right? If they didn't love Alec Pierce or they thought he was going to make, and he winds up going back to the Colts, right? But, he was going to be the number one guy. Mike Evans never seemed like a fit here to me. I liked Wan'Dale Robinson. He got a bunch of money. I think the Browns probably thought he wasn't worth what he wound up getting. So I'm okay with that, and I understand that. Now, I do think you need to add a veteran piece to this room, whether that's, a second or third tier guy that comes in and has a veteran presence to him, or if they trade for a guy. We've talked about Brian Thomas in Jacksonville. I don't know if he's available. You hear the rumors about other guys. I think between now and the draft, it's still possible that Andrew Berry surprises and pulls off a trade for receiver. If not, then their biggest offseason addition at that position is going to have to come in the draft, and it's going to have to come pretty early in the draft. I would say by that number 39 pick.
All right, so one of the guys that the Browns signed, Quincy Williams, when he met with the media, was asked how he plays linebacker.
Cheetah chasing the gazelle when he first wake up.
I like that. So could you expand on that? That's a good description.
Expand on it. Biggest thing is speed. So my mindset is be there before the ball gets there, or be there before the runner or receiver knows you're there. So that's my mindset. So the only way I can do that is by my preparation. Number one, that's making sure the game plan is right, making sure I know where I need to be, making sure I know where my teammates are too, so I know what plays I can take and I know what shots I can take. And so that all that put together, it looks like a cheetah chasing the gazelle. Because I know where I'm going, and I know how fast I need to be to get there before you turn around.
Scott, I know you wrote an article. Take us through that, and the more you hear Quincy Williams talk, I want to see him on the field. Can we get him on the field early?
Yeah, a lot of personality there. Calls himself Joker. Dyes his hair green because of Joker. The guy's fast. He talked about, obviously just played that clip. Wants to be really aggressive, cover the field, light guys up. That's the impression I took away certainly from the cheetah reference. And has had a really solid career. All pro in 2023. So the resume is good. Disappointing year last year wasn't, things just weren't how they should be with the Jets. And they had coaching issues, and he butted heads with one of the coaches and, got taken out of the starting lineup for a couple plays against the Browns. So I know he's looking for a fresh start. He's motivated by what happened. And the connection with him and Mike Rutenberg, which you referenced at the top of the show, I think that's going to be huge for him. He's going to be comfortable. He can help people get to know Rutenberg, get to know whatever tweaks Rutenberg makes to the system. He's certainly going to be comfortable in it and should allow him to play free like he wants to. And, if the Browns wanted to bring back Devin Bush, this was a really strong pivot because I think there's a lot of upside to Quincy Williams.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking as you were mentioning that. Devin Bush got more money. Quincy Williams seems to be something that the Browns can find a way to use. Some news from over the weekend kind of catching up. Browns signed former 49ers starting defensive tackle Clea Davis, 1-year deal, started all 17 games for the Niners last year. And then the Commanders signed former Browns running back Jerome Ford, 1-year deal, so he leaves Cleveland after 4 seasons. Ford wasn't going to really have a role. Dylan Sampson was a little bit redundant to what Ford did. But when you look at Davis, that's another guy to add to that rotation at defensive tackle. It's pretty strong.
Yeah, Ford, we knew Ford was leaving, but I do think it opens a spot for a veteran. Maybe they don't agree. Maybe they think you can go all young at that position. But all the guys on the roster now were rookies last year. So it'll be interesting to see if they add somebody. Usually you can find a really proven veteran for cheap as the offseason goes on. I wouldn't be surprised if they added somebody like that. Maybe a guy can play on third down. Jerome was good in that area. As it comes to D-tackle, the Browns they did a great job finding Malik Collins from the Niners last year. When they cut him, he and Davis played together. And I can't say that I'm an expert on Davis. He's got 1.5 sacks in his career. My guess is the Browns feel there's untapped pass rush potential. And if you put him in the system, you put him next to Malik Collins, next to Mason Graham, that he can have even a bigger impact. But the fact that he started for 17 games for a team like the 49ers, has played in that Robert Saleh system, which is going to be real similar to what the Browns do because it was similar to what Jim Schwartz did. Plus, Rutenberg is a solid disciple. I just think it makes sense, and you can never have enough guys on that line, especially in the interior.
Scott Patrick and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out, other side of the break, back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE, be right back.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little flag in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little flag in your day. Put a little flag in your day.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrak from the Chronicle Telegram as well as brownzone.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
The Browns thought they were smarter than everybody else when they gave Deshaun Watson $230 million guaranteed. Now you're stuck with a guy who's played 19 games in 5 years, and you've kicked his money so far down the road that you can't just pull a Denver Broncos or a Miami Dolphins and just cut him and be done with him and just eat that money. But not Cleveland. Cleveland won't cut bait because they don't want to admit to the league that they screwed that up. We should have been rid of this guy 2 years ago, ate that money and kept it moving, because now he's put us in a position where every year you have to keep restructuring and kick his money down, and you can't really go get no free agents. So way to go, Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Scott, you can say the contract and all that. At the time, I thought it was a good move. Relative to kicking it down the can, that's what's been able to them to sign some of the free agents, and they're going to end up, it's a post-June 1st cut, and then it's $45 million. That's a lot different than $89 or $93 million.
Yeah, I mean, they're still taking that, whatever, $90 million. It's just over
2 years.
a couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can make the argument both ways, David. If they had decided after, let's say, 2024, right? Deshaun had the Achilles. He hadn't played any good. You know, Jimmy Haslam says it was a big swing and a miss. If they had decided to take the huge salary cap hit, and I don't even know what it would have been, $150 million, hey, you could have talked me into that or explained it, right? And, hey, it's here. You're going to take all your lumps right now and then grow after that. They decided not to do that. They didn't want to just blow it up and do a complete teardown. So I get it. But they put themselves in a spot where this is how they had to handle it. And it's going to hurt them for a while. It's going to, I mean, at least a couple more years after this. And that's just the result of the trade. It was a bad trade. It was a disastrous trade. And they're trying to make the best of it as they can when there's no really good solution to get out of it.
So what's your gut feeling with quarterback right now? Do you think the Browns roll with the three they have? Do they add a veteran? Do they draft one?
Yeah, they're going to add somebody, whether it's a draft pick or a veteran. I don't know for sure. I felt like they would add a veteran, right? Do you want a third guy who's either a rookie or second year? It seems kind of lopsided to me. But the longer we go through the offseason, and I know it's only a week into free agency, but I could see them waiting until the draft. Todd Monken has a relationship with a lot of these guys in the draft. Maybe they like somebody. So right now I would lean toward draft, but if they make a trade for Anthony Richardson next week, that wouldn't stun me either. And maybe do both. Maybe they add a veteran and a draft pick and then figure it out, right? I know they couldn't keep everybody on the roster, but that's such an important position. I don't think you want to limit yourself in how you try to fix it or help it.
So when you look at the roster as it's currently constructed, 1 week plus into free agency, do you think the Browns have made some upgrades to the roster?
I do. It's tough because linebacker is probably a wash, or close to a wash. Is Stoll better than David Njoku? No, but he's cheaper and, I think he's younger. He's got to be younger, and he's way cheaper, right? So I don't know about that. And that offensive line, I think it is an upgrade, just the way last season ended, right? Everybody being hurt, everybody getting older. This feels like an upgrade. What I will say is they had a huge need, and it ties into what we talked about earlier. They had a huge need. They didn't have an offensive line 2 weeks ago. Now they have an offensive line. So I do think that helps, or that's an improvement over where they were. Now, if you want to blame the Browns for not having an offensive line, you could do that too. So it's tough to get overly excited about what they've done. They haven't added a lot of skill players, Davis on the D-line. So I don't know. I guess I'm kind of wishy-washy, but I do like the commitment to the offensive line.
All right. So when you look at the roster now, does the offensive line, what's the area that needs upgrading the most still?
I'd go receiver just because it hasn't been addressed. And I do think there's a sizable hole there. And I think Jerry Jeudy fits better as a number 2. So that leaves your number 1 hole. Now, maybe Jerry Jeudy winds up being your number 1 and you get a number 2, but I would go there. Now, left tackle's a huge hole. And, could you put DeJuan Jones there? Yes. I think they draft a guy. So I feel pretty comfortable they're going to address both those spots. But right now, those are the 2 spots. And that removes quarterback from the equation because that discussion is just so messy, whether you think they should try to upgrade over Shadur or you think they should give Shadur next year.
All right, mock draft season, because we're about a month away from the draft. Josh Edwards from CBS Sports put this one together. Has the Browns taking Monroe Freeling from Georgia at 6, the offensive tackle. Carnell Tate was there. He went with Freeling. He goes 8 to the Saints. Mayuga goes to the Chiefs at 9. Mekhi Lemon, wide receiver. Cowboys at 20, and he has the Browns taking Jordan Tyson. from Arizona State at 24. Certainly, all of those are likely possible. The one thing about Freeling, plays left tackle, and as I've said, anybody from Georgia, Todd Monken will have and will be able to get information that nobody else can likely get.
Well, sure, and there's a lot to like about him. I mean, he might be the most athletic guy in the draft. Hasn't played a ton, so I think it's a little bit of a projection, but really talented, really athletic. I like him. You know, I think some people might say 6 is a reach. I don't know if it is. I think the Browns would be comfortable taking him there if they don't trade back and then figure it out. So yeah, I think he makes sense. You know, in that list, Lemon was a little low. I really like Mekhi Lemon. But if the Browns could go Freeling and then Tyson, I know there's the injury questions, but I think a lot of fans would consider that a home run draft or home run first round.
Yeah, you get somebody that plays on the outside. If he can stay healthy, that solves what you're looking for. And then the left tackle is a big guy who by all accounts can move his feet pretty well. So you like the building blocks there. Scott, as always, thanks so much. Appreciate you making some time for us. Thanks very much.
Thanks, David.
Scott Petrak, he is the Browns beat reporter for the Chronicle Telegram. Online, check him out, brownzone.com. Always insightful Browns coverage. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, Chris Easterling, Browns beat reporter for the Akron Beacon Journal. Still talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey guys, AB's O-line pickups are not making me feel great about where our O-line stands, considering the big contracts we handed out. I heard yesterday on one of the sports shows, bad teams have to overspend to get mediocre starting caliber players. And these guys we obtained, at least based on PFF grades, are just that. As for the draft, still looks like to me we need a left tackle and a right guard, pending Joel's decision. Juwan Jones is a backup swing tackle, unfortunately, due to his injury history, and Tevin Jenkins a starter at guard. No thanks. Hey, love the show.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Chris Easterling, Browns beat reporter for the Akron Beacon Journal. Chris, we'll talk plenty about the offensive line here. You have to overpay. When your team isn't great, you got to give the guy a reason to come. All the guys they've signed, and you wrote an article about this, they're all versatile.
Yeah, I mean, look, Tytus Howard is coming to play right tackle. He said that today in the Zoom call we had with him. But, you know, there's versatility. You can move these guys around a little bit. Tevin Jenkins isn't a starting is probably not your starter. He's more probably in the same role he was last year. He's a guy he's gonna play, you know, be a swing backup guard, maybe play tackle, show up, extra tackle and jumbo packages. You know, Zion Johnson's your left tackle, barring Joe Bitonio coming back, and I just don't think Joe Bitonio is coming back. And Elgin Jenkins, he can play center, but he's more of a guard. So, I think he ends up playing guard, and I think they trust Luke Whippler, they believe in Luke Whippler, or they draft this center. So, like you said, they've got guys they can move around, and this is what happens when everybody on your offensive line is their contracts all expire at the same time, and they're all of this. They're all over 30. They're all this is where you're stuck. And you had to accelerate the process somehow. And this is how you accelerate it. They're not trading you. Nobody's trading you Trent Williams, or Trent Williams is too old anyways. Not that he's not great, but that's not who you go trade for. You trade for somebody a little bit younger, but you know, I don't know where. If you thought they were going to get a bunch of all pros, they're not. But you know, it's a process. They like you said, they have to plug holes, and that's what they're going to do.
We'll get back.
They have done.
We'll get to that in a second. I have another question for you regarding that. But Joel Bitonio's contract, again, I know you wrote an article about it. What happens with that is, you know, he hasn't come out and said he's retiring. Because his contract expired, he's listed as a free agent. So what goes on with Bitonio?
He's $23.5 million salary cap hit. He's dead money. In the discussion. So he has to sign a new contract. There's no... now, I'm sure there are ways, accounting ways to spread that, to make it right, or I'm sure there's somehow, some way to do it, but to maybe spread it, but probably, but I don't think there is really. You know, this is, again, you know, this is a situation they found him in, and nobody blames Joel for taking his time and wanting to make sure he's the right decision. So, but you know, you're going to have to take that salary cap hit. You know, it's just stacking dead money over dead money. I mean, it's you can get away with it when you're Philadelphia and you win Super Bowl. You can get away with it when you're New Orleans and you have you have a decade of contention that includes a Super Bowl win. When you're the Cleveland Browns, you can't get away with it when you don't draft well. You haven't drafted well until 2025. You hadn't drafted well, and you make trades like the Deshaun Watson trade, and you don't win, and that's the difference. It ends up hurting you in the long run.
So the caller mentioned the PFF grades, and again, this is neither good nor bad about PFF. It's kind of an independent way to measure. How much of a variance is there with the way a guy plays based on scheme he's in, so what you're asking him to do, and the offensive line coach? So all these guys can do certain things or they wouldn't be in the NFL. The question is, can you highlight what they do well enough to have a decent offensive line? I think Andrew Berry has raised the floor of this offensive line significantly. I don't know that he's raised the ceiling a whole lot yet.
No, I agree with that. I think the floor is raised. I think Zion Johnson's athletic, he's durable, he's shown himself to be durable, and he's versatile. He's 26 also. So, there's still room to grow. And like, George Warhop, who Todd Monken hired as offensive line coach, it's universally praised. Tytus Howard praised them today. Joe Thomas swears by him. So, I think offensive line coach helps. I think scheme helps. I also think, again, it's a process. Rome wasn't built in a day, and you're not going to rebuild an offensive line that has, especially when you haven't drafted well at offensive line. Again, it goes back to they dug themselves their own hole. Zach Zinter hasn't produced anything close to what they hoped for. The Jed Wills pick was a bust. It's just, this is where you're at, and this is what you have to deal with. And, PFF grades are great when they make your argument. You talk to people in the building about PFF grades, and they'll roll their eyes and scoff at them because, the best example is Denzel Ward in coverage. PFF has hated Denzel Ward since he came into the league, yet he's one of the top corner. Everybody acknowledges he's one of the top cornerbacks in the league. So, you take a PFF grade with a grain of salt, and so, but because if it backs your argument, you point to it. If the PFF grade doesn't, you ignore it, and so I just sort of shrug when it comes to that.
All right, Tytus Howard, you mentioned, met with the media today. He was asked what stood out about the Browns that made him want to come here and sign the extension.
We all know how talented the defense is. You got a lot of great guys on the defense. Myles Garrett, the best defensive end in the league. Malik Collins, you got Denzel Ward. You know, on offense, you got a lot of young pieces. You got Shadur, you got Harold Fannin, you got Judy, you got Judkins, Alabama native. I'm from Alabama. My mom's lives in Montgomery, where he's from. You got a lot of young pieces, and you saw, if you watched tape and you saw Cleveland last year, they was in a lot of games, and I felt like by me coming here and some other guys who brought in coming here, us being able to protect and open some lanes up front, we can kind of help the team get to the next hump, because like you said, the core pieces are already here. You just got to add a couple more, and this team can be a really good team. So that kind of enticed me to come here. And also, after seeing the staff and hearing a lot about, a lot of the guys like Coach Monken and all the other guys, hearing a lot of players talk about how much they like them, it kind of, helped me with this decision too.
Chris, I know you wrote an article about free agency, the early free agent period, so where we sit. What are your thoughts when you look at what Andrew Berry's done? I mean, there isn't a slam dunk, but I don't think anybody that was close to it and heard him talk at the Combine expected it. Once Linderbaum went off the board for $27 million, I didn't think they were going to spend a lot of money on the line.
No, I think I wrote something for Saturday about grading the first week of moves, and to me, grading things in the moment is fool's gold. I mean, it's fool's errand, because there's been plenty of times where a team has made a bunch of moves in the offseason. Look at the Browns, and been declared offseason champions, and they go 3-13, 3-14. So, I mean, but to me, it's about process, and I like the process. They had a couple of big glaring needs, the offensive line and wide receiver, and he at least attacked one of them and tried to alleviate some of the issues there. Now, you're not going to do it all in one free agency class or all with a couple of trades. He's got to now go out and back that up with a good draft. Wide receiver, they still need to do things with wide receiver that I'm a little surprised there hasn't been a move, which tells me maybe that the draft is where they're going to expend more of their capital to help there. But that just brings more young guys into that room, which I still, I've said before, outside of Jerry Jeudy, you don't have much experience, veteran experience there. So, I think it would help to have another good veteran guy to be in that room. So, all in all, I mean, process-wise, I can't criticize too much. Now, it's about seeing if these moves actually pay off when they get on the field.
So one of those guys that we've alluded to, Zion Johnson, met with the media, talked about getting to work with Brown's new offensive line coach, George Warhop.
That was a huge draw for me as well. I think he's one of those offensive line coaches that, draws guys in just with his level of coaching. Like, he is one of the elite offensive line coaches, and I think that's pretty well known. So to, have the opportunity to come in and, have him coach me, to learn things from him, but also, to, bounce off of him as well, I think is going to be great for me and great for our room as a whole.
And you know what, Chris, again, who knows? That's certainly what you want to hear from somebody who is getting ready to try to rebuild this line. And here's what you have to hope. All really good offensive lines, the five guys working together is usually better than each of them individually. And you got to hope George Warhop can do that.
Well, I mean, again, when you hear guys like Joe Thomas, Tytus Howard, just down the line, the people that work with him, have worked with him, played for him, when they just rave about him the way they rave about George Warhop, that tells me all I need to know. That it's not going to be an issue with coaching. It just isn't. It's going to be about these guys going out, like you're saying, developing that cohesion and consistency in play. And that's something they haven't been able to the last 3 years because there's been such turnover due to injuries that they really haven't been able to develop even that consistency. So, you know, we talk about, oh, they got to replace everybody. Well, considering the number of offensive line combinations they've started over the last 3 years, is that a bad thing? I mean, what consistency are? It's been 3-4 years since you had consistency in terms of across a starting five. So, hey, let's see what this group can do. I mean, hey, let's see what it looks like in its final form. Also, it's not even St. Patrick's Day yet, and got a long time till they don't play till after Labor Day for the first time that it counts. So let's see where it goes and see what other pieces join the group.
Chris Easterling, Browns beat reporter for the Akron Beacon Journal, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little flag in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little flag in your day. Put a little flag in your day.
We continue talking Browns with Chris Easterling from the Akron Beacon Journal. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
The Browns did pretty well in free agency. They're focused on that offensive line. Now, presumably they're going to draft a tackle, but if you were to take one in the free agent market, you've got the kid from Green Bay or Taylor Decker, the former Buckeye, Detroit Lion. If you had to pick one to sign, who are you signing? Probably going towards the Green Bay guy because he's younger. And I think Decker's got an injury history, but I think Decker's been a stalwart for a while too. So that'd be a tough choice if you had to sign one. And I'm hoping if they draft one, they take the kid out of Georgia, the Monroe Freeling. Just want to hear your thoughts. Go Browns. Oh.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Chris, Walker signed the 1 year, I think it was a 1 year deal with Carolina, so it was more of a prove-it deal for him. Decker's up there in age, injury history. I'm having Jack Conklin flashbacks relative to a guy that's, you alluded to before we went to break. They need guys that are going to be out there consistently so that they can get some chemistry. Freeling, I don't have a problem with him. The one thing I think of Freeling that I've said, because he was the offensive coordinator under Kirby Smart, they're going to have intel on him that nobody else does. Todd Monken is who I'm referring to. He was at Georgia. He can pick up Kirby Smart and get straight answers on Monroe Freeling.
Look, I think you're seeing that Monroe Freeling is the guy that's being most connected to the Browns. At 6, or if they trade back a little bit. Although I wonder if this is just people catching up to the mock drafts catching up to what the scouts already knew. Look, I believe you draft a left tackle. You don't sign or trade for a left tackle unless you get a Trent Williams in his prime. That's great, but otherwise. I think the good ones are typically drafted and developed, and that's why I still think the Browns are going to draft a left tackle. And if you look at what they look for, those traits are all there for Monroe Freeling. Now, Manoa, the kid from Miami, I know I mispronounced that, but he's a right tackle. Spencer Fano. Well, we just spent the Super Bowl talking about Will Campbell's short arms, and his arms are shorter than Will Campbell's. Plus, he played the last 2 years at right tackle, I meant. So, that's why, and just everything just sort of adds up to, I think, Monroe Freeling, and, get your left tackle, get him in here, and then, develop him, and, hope that this time, unlike in 2020, you got it right. So,
all right. So how do you weigh drafting a playmaker a guy at 6 that you can put on the outside that defenses have to go, and then he creates some space for Jerry Jeudy, Harold Fannin, versus that left tackle. How do you think Andrew Berry measures that? How are you looking at that? How are you comparing those guys at 6?
I think the higher end player is at left tackle. I think the positional value is at left tackle. There's depth in this you're going to get a really good wide receiver at 24. I'm sorry, forgive me. I just don't look at Carnell Tate and think Jamar Chase. I realize if Carnell Tate played at another school besides Ohio State, would Cleveland fans be this enamored with him? Probably not. I mean, he's a good player, don't get me wrong, but you need a left tackle. Your quarterback can't complete the passes to the wide receiver if his blind side's not protected. We've been dealing with this issue in Cleveland since Joe Thomas retired, and we dealt with this issue until they got Joe Thomas. So we've seen, you need that offensive left tackle position filled first, because I think the top end of this left tackle class is better than the top end of the wide receiver class relative to what they can provide at their positions.
All right, so another free agent, the Browns signed linebacker Quincy Williams. Talked about defensive coordinator Mike Rutenberg.
Oh, that's my dog. He's like my brother. First thing before we talk about football, the biggest thing is Rudy cares about the heart. Biggest thing, what I did off the field affects what I do on the field. So that's what he wanted to tackle both things, as far as like what I do on the field, so I can show up as myself, show up as this personality, always smiling as me, show up every single day at work like that. So he cares about that a lot. And then on the field, as long as he take care off the field, on the field should be easy. So he say that all the time. That's his biggest thing. But on the field, taught me every single thing I knew as far as like the linebacker positions in the league, was with me the 3 teams I've been on. So we have a good relationship as far as like what he expects and what's his little niches that he may and may not have. I ain't going to tell them, though. You good.
And do you feel like you'll be sort of rejuvenated with him here this year?
I'll be rejuvenated, number 1, for having a different team, and then I'll be rejuvenated, number 2, by being in the same scheme. Number 3, also him being the defensive coordinator is one of those things where I know for a fact I'm going to be put in the best position possible, and then on top of that, I'm able to tell the locker room or tell the defensive guys that, hey, we're in good hands. Let's just play the play. Let's play the call. It's going to work out, because I know for a fact the relationship, and I know for a fact what his mindset is and what's his why. So I know he's off the field and I know he's on the field. So I'm here to help him feed his family too.
Chris, I know you wrote an article about why Quincy Williams chose the Browns. Take us through that.
Well, I think Mike Rutenberg's one of the big reasons why. I mean, I think, Quincy said it there. I mean, Mike Rutenberg helped unlock him as an NFL player. I mean, helped him turn him into a first-team All-Pro. There's a familiarity there. That it works both ways. Also, is that with Quincy signing, it gives Mike a guy in that locker room, in that defensive meeting room, who is who's familiar, who can be a voice for him, can be an advocate for him. And meanwhile, Quincy has an advocate for him on this coaching staff, and Mike, who has worked with him before, knows him at his best, and hopefully that connection gets the best out of both of them.
All right, before I let you go, gut feeling, do you think the Browns bring in another quarterback, or are they rolling with the 3 they have?
I think I think at this point I would lean toward that if they bring in another quarterback, it's a drafted quarterback, draft and develop, and I've said all along, if you couldn't get somebody, a veteran in the free agent or trade market, who can who's immediately and clearly better than what you have on the roster, I think you honestly have to go with Shedeur. It has to be Shedeur's job, because you have to find out. This is a season for Shedeur to prove it that, hey, we can bank on you as a starting quarterback and give him that opportunity. New system, a coaching staff that that can do things with them. Let's see, fix the offensive line, fix here you go, Shedeur. Let's see what you can do. And I think that's the best, because the best way out of this for the Browns and the financial mess they're in terms of where the cap is and dead money and all that stuff, is for Shedeur Sanders to hit.
Chris Easterling, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Chris.
Hey, thanks.
Chris Easterling, make sure you check him out. Browns beat reporter for the Akron Beacon Journal. Always good and insightful Browns coverage. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.